welcome to our in-service
She couldn't make it?
meeting,
Okay.
For this month. I'm Susan Johnson.
No worries.
I used to
I'm glad you're here.
pastor for 18 years.
Thank
Then took
Good
a
to see
little
you.
You're welcome.
half
Come on
leave
in.
and came back this last month. And so
This is
wonderful
Sarah.
to be here. It's wonderful to see familiar faces. It's fun to see new caregivers that I'll get to meet. I would love for you to come up and introduce yourselves to me when our in-service is over, so I can
Awesome.
get to know your names.
One down, Sarah.
We have
Thank you for the
few
opportunity. So our
announcements
other
going to
director of nursing
provide
wasn't
for
able to
us,
make it, so it's just Sarah and I.
We're just kind
So,
of waiting for
thank
the
you.
presenter and his group, 2 people, are all ready to go. So without further ado, Allison.
This is Oliver. Yes, you know.
Okay, yes, welcome everybody. We love that people are coming. We try really hard to plan in service where it's informative and helpful. Even if you've been doing this for years and years, we like you can have refresher information, or it's just always good to hear things and learn, in my opinion. So I'm actually really excited about today. Just a few things. I know the newsletter went out, but we want to remind you that our yearly summer picnic is coming up next month. So that's on the Tuesday the 18th from 6 to 8. Same place we usually have it, which is the Orem Park behind the library. And we'll, continue to send out information about that in all the newsletters. We'll probably have you guys let us know if you're coming so that we can get an idea of how many people we're feeding so that we have enough food and that we don't run out and things like that. But that's a celebration. We want you to come. Bring your family or a friend if you don't have family around. We just want to celebrate, our caregivers and our company. Since it's our 20th year this year, we're just really excited about it, and we want to appreciate you guys in every way possible. So we're going to feed you and spend time together. Couple of other things. If we can get people to remember to check their schedules, I know a lot of you do such a good job at that. We've just had a little bit of an increase of people either forgetting a shift, which is really, really hard on us because, sorry, that just means someone goes without care because they don't, oh goodness, they don't always call in and let us know that no one showed up. And so, I just got a tickle in my throat. Sorry. I might need water. Anyway, so check your schedule. And also, if there's someone on your schedule, gosh. Sorry. If someone's on your schedule and you didn't agree to it, we want to know that too. So when you go in AlayaCare, you can swipe and see several weeks out. And so we have an amazing scheduling team, but nobody's perfect. So please check your schedule. Sorry again, guys. Sorry. And just make sure that everybody that's supposed to be there is there. And if you see somebody that is there and you're like, what? Let us know. Communication is super important. And we don't want to let our clients down in any way. And then also a big thing is making sure that if the client wants you to stay extra time, sometimes they aren't able to make the decision. Maybe they have dementia, or maybe they're not the ones paying for the shift. So we always need you guys to text or call into the office, even if it's after 5 o'clock. If you don't get an answer right away, you guys can always text me as well. But we just need to make sure that the right person is approving the extra time. So when they come on with us, they schedule certain amounts of time. And so we don't want to charge whoever's paying extra if it's not okay. Anyway, so we need you guys to text in and let us know if extra time was spent, if you were late to your shift, like if anything deviates from what your shift is supposed to be, we just need to be made aware of that, and then can okay it with the client or the family, whoever's in charge. And then, gosh, I had to write all this down. And then, like, if anything scheduling changes needs to be made, we're the ones that you guys need to reach out to about those changes. I know sometimes it might feel like it's easier to talk to the client, but they may be afraid to say, no, I can't make that change, and feel pressured. So any changes need to come through the office, and then we'll be the ones to reach out. And if they're asking you for a change, just tell them, hey, you need to reach out to scheduling. They're the ones that really, take care of this. So just those little quick reminders. We really appreciate everything you guys do. I know you guys give your heart and soul. We here at the office do the same. And so we try and not make mistakes, try to be supportive, but we know that sometimes we fall short, but that our heart is really to love and serve and do the best we can. We have several shifts that are open, especially on Friday. If you guys can stop by in the scheduling room and go over that, we can put your names down for the ones that you are willing to work. And if you get put in a shift, we'll put your name in a drawing for a $25 gift card. We have several, we have lots of people that need services, and so lots of open shifts. So we can really, really use your help.
Both Saturday and Sunday paid time and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So like anything after midnight Friday night.
Correct.
Up till midnight Sunday night.
Yep. Any other quick questions before we turn the time over to the really fun and interesting stuff? Nope. Okay. Are you? Sure. Yes. Melissa's one of our caregivers, and she's going to introduce her husband, who is one of our presenters today. So we'll turn time over to her.
And I know how important it is to talk into this because I've watched these presentations later. I'm like, I couldn't hear them. So it's really nice to be at the microphone now. So, my husband, we've been married 32 plus years. And so I'm very happy to have him here today.
Woohoo.
And he's a hospice chaplain with a great company. And so, and then his boss, Sarah, is here too. And so it'll be a great presentation. So, and I encourage you to ask questions. Kevin, I know, is an open book, and Sarah would be too, where you can just ask him anything. So here you go. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, honey. First of all, I just want to thank you all for allowing us to come today. This is a privilege. I've got this one on. This is a privilege and an honor to be here. And I just want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for what you do. It's an amazing opportunity for you to touch the hearts and lives of people and other caregivers and families in an incredible way. And I just want to thank you for your commitment, for your hard work, and for your love for the people that you take care of. So it's an honor for me to be here today along with my supervisor, Sarah Hill. I work for Suncrest Hospice Care. We're located in Sandy. And I've been with them since February, so it's been a few months. But I was asked today to share, some concepts concerning grief. And so I guess the title of my little time together is called The Grieving Process. And I'm going to be specifically talking about it on a spiritual level, and then Sarah will probably pick up some other pieces along the way. And then the other thing that we do want to do is give you opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and babe, would you mind helping me? Just making sure everyone gets a copy of this, and you can keep this. This is just a little paper that I made up for our presentation today. And I'll try not to take a ton of time, but I'll wait for her to kind of pass that out so you can kind of follow along with me as we're going through this today. And I pray that this will be helpful. I hope that this will be helpful to you, to each and every one of you, as you're taking care of your clients, as you're taking care of these wonderful people that have been put into your path. First of all, I just want to say, I was initially contacted by, I believe her name was Karen, and then it's kind of been passed down. Diane spoke with me, and then Susan I just met today. But here was the question: can you come and help us to help people on our own personal level in an emotional way? Can you come and help us with our emotions? Because a lot of our people, when we go and visit our clients, our patients, and they're either dying or in the process of dying or they've passed, our emotions are overwhelming and we're falling apart. and so I'm here today to help with that. I'm here today to speak to that. So the first thing I want to share with you is grief is normal. Some of these things you might like, duh, I already know that. But it helps to continue to talk about it, right? And to process it. So grief is normal. Everyone grieves when someone passes from this life to the next. The bottom line is, at one point, at one day or another, all of us are going to die, right? And it hurts deeply. And every one of our patients are eventually going to pass. Especially, it's very hard because, you know, if we've spent a lot of time caring for that person, it makes it that much more hard to see them go. We take hope that that person is in a better place. We hope for that, right? Without any more pain or suffering. But that doesn't change the fact that they are not here with us and we miss them desperately, right? You know, here's the thing. Of course, I'm a pastor. That's been my vocation for many, many years. We're actually helping a little church in Richfield right now. I go down there on weekends. And we just had one of who I would call our main pillar, a backbone of the church, a gentleman that had been there for many, many years, pass away suddenly of a heart attack. And it was devastating to his wife. It was devastating to our church family. And it's been a month ago, April Fool's Day, April 1st. Can you believe that? He passed. But, we're still working through that. We're still processing that. And every Sunday, I just say from the pulpit, folks, we need each other. We need to encourage each other. A main person in this body of believers has passed on from this life to the next. And we need to be there for each other. And it's okay to grieve. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to cry. And so that's something that leads me to the next point, expressing your emotions. You know, we don't just think thoughts, we feel with the emotional register that God has given us. There's nothing wrong with allowing our emotions to flow. We're human beings. It's okay to cry in front of other people. It's okay to cry in front of relatives. You're showing empathy. Not just sympathy, but empathy, which goes much deeper than sympathy. Okay? We need to strive to express our grief appropriately at the right time and place. Don't suppress your emotions. A good cry is a cathartic blessing from God. If it was good enough for Jesus, it ought to be good enough for us, right? Jesus wept. His dear friend Lazarus had died. And Jesus knew he was going to resurrect him from the dead. But he still wept. He still mourned the loss of his friend. Number 3, take one day at a time. Jesus encourages us to not worry about tomorrow because tomorrow has enough trouble of its own, right? He promises us grace sufficient for each day, and he teaches us to come each day humbly depending on him for the needs of that day. And of course, because I'm a minister, right? Because hospice chaplaincy is kind of at the core of who I am. You know, we need to look to God for comfort. There's an awesome verse that I share with a lot of people, a lot of caregivers, family members, and it's this verse. It's one of my favorite verses. Psalms 34:18. It says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." Wow, that's a promise, right? Number 4, be prepared for grief to affect you in a wide and unexpected variety of ways. Yeah. Some places or circumstances trigger memories, right? You may experience fear, anger, frustration, even hopelessness. The key is to do your part to be ready and not allow it to consume your attitudes, your thoughts or your actions. And what I mean by that is sometimes you just gotta take a deep breath and say a little prayer or say a thought, I need your help, God. I need you right now. Give God your heart. Put your hope in him. My very best friend from high school passed away at 58 years old of COVID. 2021. I think about him every single day. His widow is still not remarried. It's been 2.5 years, and that's okay. But she posts a lot on Facebook and Instagram memories of her husband. And when she posts, I remember. And I cry. I still cry to this day. Gus and I were like this. We were inseparable high school buddies. We got in trouble together. We had fun together. And we were at each other's weddings. I mean, the list goes on and on. We kept in contact through the years. Nothing separated our friendship. We wouldn't allow anything to separate our friendship. So when he passed away, it was incredibly painful. But I remember him, and I continue to give his wife to God, give his 3 children to God, all of his grandkids to God. And that's what gives me hope to keep going. Number 5, if needed, accept wise counsel and help. This is so important, precious people. Talk to someone. Don't allow your feelings to get stuffed inside, but be willing to find a counselor. Be willing to find a professional to help you. Bereavement is a serious injury to the soul, so we shouldn't hesitate to accept help when it's offered. Our company, Suncrest, we offer bereavement care and assistance to those in need of emotional, psychological, and mental strength and help and hope. Grief recovery programs can assist. Perhaps your pastor or minister or your bishop or another spiritual leader can also help you. My wife went through this grief share program in a church we attended way back. It's been years ago when we lived in Missouri after her dad passed away. Very, very helpful to her. So these are the kind of things that I encourage you to look for to help you in the process of grief. Number 6, focus on present responsibilities. This is the thing that I think can affect all of us, is sometimes we get so overwhelmed with grief that we feel like we can't go on, right? We can't continue working, and we're a mess. And my prayer is that we can take steps to alleviate that so that the grief will not consume us and paralyze us. Although time is needed to begin to heal after the trauma a death inflicts on our souls, we do have responsibilities and obligations that must be fulfilled. Others can help for a time while we mourn the loss, but sooner or later, we need to dry our eyes, at least for a few hours, and take up the work we've been given to do, and do it within the best of our ability. More often than not, and this is very important, and psychologists tell us this, more often than not, attending to our responsibilities and continue to work is one of the ways that God helps us begin to heal. Right? Because we're not focusing on our emotions, we're focusing on the tasks at hand. And then number 7, this is super important. I just wanted to throw out some practical things that have helped me, and that I know has helped other people doing what you do. Prayer, solitude, going for a walk, exercise, meditating on the scriptures, journaling, giving God our pain, seeking God for hope, peace, and strength. All of these will help in the grieving process. And the last thing I shared is another verse of scripture from the Bible. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with you all. And that's my prayer for all of you today. I'm going to pass the baton now to Sarah, my supervisor, and then at the end of her sharing, we'll open it up for some questions, okay? Thank you. You bet.
Hi. Just want to know, how much time do we have? We have until 12 to 1? Okay, perfect. Thank you. It is so good to be here with you guys today, and this is an amazing opportunity. We love being able to extend, the experiences that we have in hospice and what we know about grief and bereavement, because we deal with it daily. And so do you guys, just in a different way. And again, my name is Sarah, and so I oversee our team of chaplains and social workers. I'm a social worker by trade, and I love being a social worker and I love hospice. I really enjoy working with our families and most of all our patients. It is quite, I would say, a reverent experience to be able to walk that journey with our patients towards the very last breath. But I thought in starting today, if I could just get a raise of hands, how many of you have lost somebody really close to you, a loved one? So almost, I think everybody in this room has. If you haven't, you will. Raise your hand if you've lost a patient while at Aspen Care. So a good chunk of you have. So I wanted to go over a little bit, just for educational purposes, some parts of grief that you probably already are well aware of. But again, like Kevin said, I think the more we remind ourselves of what it is that we're facing when it comes to grief, the more we can apply it and internalize it. So I'll just go over quickly the 5 stages of grief. Are you all aware of the 5 stages of grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross? So first stage, shock and denial. So I guess I also want this to be really interactive. So in your words, what's your experience with denial and shock when it comes to grief? What are some physical characteristics that you had when it comes to that?
I'm just like, no way, that couldn't happen. They're still alive. There's no way.
Mm-hmm. Feels surreal, right? Thank you. And then next, there's anger. In the psychological world, we hear anger as a secondary emotion, right? It's like an iceberg, and underneath is really what we're feeling, which is, could be depression, could be a lot of things. And then there's bargaining, and bargaining is kind of an interesting process. And the way I describe bargaining when it comes to grief is, I'll give you an example. We had a lady on our services who just died last week, and she was in her 70s. She went to the hospital, and when you go to the hospital, you have to discharge from hospice and then come back on. So she had just come back on hospice, and she died in her sleep in her chair. And our caregiver, our CNA, she found her in the morning, and it came as a shock to her because we didn't think she would die that fast. There's a lot of signs and symptoms that that you guys are probably aware of, that it's going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Anyway, we didn't have any of those signs. She just died in her sleep. And in talking to the caregivers and the nurse, there was a lot of a lot of guilt that, especially the nurse, she felt like she didn't do what she felt like she could have to help her feel comfortable, because she was in her chair. She thought, well, what if she was in pain? Like, what if she died in pain? I'll never know. And that's kind of like the bargaining, like, gosh, what could I have done differently? I should have done A, B, and C, right? And then there's depression, and we all know what depression is, but it looks so differently from Adam to Eve, right? And then there's acceptance, that level of the reality is real, and it's more of, okay, this is what happened, and I know this happened, and the only way to move forward really is to feel what I'm feeling, to let the emotion come through my body, through my life. Maybe it takes a couple days, a couple of weeks, but that level of acceptance can also turn into meaning, right? What do you make from the situation, from your experience? So those in a nutshell are the stages of grief. And of course, they're not linear. And of course, you may experience maybe 2 of this, stages out of the 5. And there's no rhyme or reason. Grief is so different from person to person. And so I just can't emphasize that enough. There is no right way to grieve. There's no like these stages of grief. This is just purely just knowledge and education, so you can label what you're feeling or experiencing. And sometimes when we label those feelings, it's validating, right? And we know what's happening. So as far as when it comes to Aspen Care, so when you think of the last year with your patients that, and maybe it's been the last 5 years, the ones that have passed away, and some of you may have had patients that have passed away frequently, maybe back to back within a week of each other. And I know in hospice that happens regularly, but maybe not as regular as your caregiving agency, because it's not the gist of what you do isn't death and dying, but it is certainly a big piece of it, right? So with these frequent deaths or infrequent deaths come, I hate the word trigger, but triggers, right? Like it can trigger other losses in our lives. And they may not be losses specifically related to death, but it might be a loss of a relationship, that a really important relationship. Maybe that patient reminded you of somebody and they died, and it's just bringing up a lot of grief of that person that you may have lost in your life. And so the hard part, I think, about your role and your job is having to go from that and then, turning around the next day and going back to work, right? That's hard. It's a fast turnaround. And you're expected to have a really great attitude and just move forward, right? And that's really hard. And I think that's not fair to ask of our caregivers, really. And so it sounds like you have a really supportive management, and I hope you do, and it sounds like you do. And but I do think it's important for your supervisors and your teammates to all be supportive of each other if you are really struggling with a patient in specific or a specific situation, so that you can have that time to really allow those emotions move from point A to point B. And I think Kevin mentioned somewhere in there, like, the only way you can really get through grief is feeling it. I mean, you can't ignore it. It just becomes bigger and more problematic. And so it really is just energy, right, that you're holding, that you really got to let flow through you. And however long that takes. And sometimes that's facing it over and over. And so anyway, I wanted to also open up the room and the table to give you guys time and I guess the opportunity to really just lean on each other and help each other and support each other with especially like the last year or two of deaths that you've had. And I just want to open up the floor. If there's somebody that you have in mind right now that you're thinking about, that you cared for, please feel free to mention their name. What did you miss about them? How was it difficult for you to get through that situation? And maybe it wasn't difficult. Maybe you just want to share what you loved about that person, because that is definitely dealing with grief as well. It may not be something horrendous you want to share or that happened, but sometimes part of grief is just sharing the really, tender moments you had with these people. So I'm a social worker. I am really comfortable with silence. So I am going to give you a few minutes, if it's a few seconds or however long it takes, and just to think about it, and then we'll kind of, I'll just open up the floor.
And if you want to share, raise your hand, and you have to use the mic so people can hear you.
Yes.
I'll start off.
So as a caregiver representing a company, and we're going into the homes of these families, and our patient passes away while we're there, and the family are there and they're grieving, but we too are, because you love these individuals. I mean, they're like family to you. And so as a professional, are there rights or wrongs to how we express our emotions at that time around the family that we should be supporting?
That's a great question. Does anybody have thoughts to what she asked? I think it's a great question. What I would say to my team is I don't think there's a right or wrong way, honestly, because when we do show emotions, like to the families that we serve, it shows that we're human, right? And I think the families can really relate to that. And I think they can really relate to and feel in a way really comforted that you loved and cared for their loved one and that it's affecting them, right? Because of the love and depth of care you had. And I think that's really like, in a way, you're honoring that person and it feels good to the family that you had that level of care. Now, I think there's a level, right? Like we don't want to be sobbing on the floor and like they're the ones who are comforting you. It should never be that, right? But I've certainly been in situations where I care. I was a social worker for this young woman. She was 33 and she died of breast cancer and she had a young daughter. It was horrifically sad. And when we were all around her bed and she was very, what we call, she was just really hollow, right? She was rail thin. And we sang to her and we prayed. And so that was definitely a moment where I just could not control my emotions and I was very emotional. So I stepped out and because it was getting to the point where I could sense that I was like getting out of control because I was like, this is so freaking sad. So then when I stepped outside, I kind of gathered myself and went back in the room. So I think it should just never be the reversal of roles, right? So that's kind of how I would answer that. It's a great question. Yeah.
I'll share.
Okay.
Janet, I took care of her. Somebody might know her too. But yeah.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I took care of Janet, and I remember, and I loved her, and she was like born the same year as my mom, and so it really, it hit home. I mean, I miss her. I think of her. I sometimes cry, and so, and I got close to her daughters too. And even though we had different beliefs in some things, it was really neat because I respected them and they respected me for our different beliefs. And I just really miss her. I'm a routine person. So I miss just the routine of just going to her house. She was a set shift that I went to. And so I just miss that routine and her as a person. So. Yeah.
For me, it's basically my dad, Gary. He was the one who founded Aspen. Never really like grieve his death just because we thought, let's just keep his memory alive, keep his legacy through Aspen. And you guys have really done that by taking care of our clients and just showing kindness and charity to them. It's just really has helped my family accept his death and know that he did good. And through you guys, we're sharing that love of taking care of the elderly, who he called the forgotten people, just because there is stuff that happens. And sometimes, even if we're just there for a couple hours to give family a relief, is something that they truly appreciate. We appreciated when we went through that portion just because we knew it was happening, but just being around family and trying to hold on to each other during that time, you just try to be the best and not show too many emotions, but it's happening. So I just see everybody. I'm very grateful for everyone. I honestly just think like great thing that helped me deal with his grief was also Oliver. I just always think that he probably sent him from heaven and told me, you need him. So Oliver's definitely very much of showing the love and wanting to help people, and he loves the attention too. We're trying to correct that. But definitely thank you for everyone who has helped with our clients.
On that note, something I remember about Gary is he would come up to the Aspen Senior Center. There was a day center where for those seniors dealing with memory issues, and he knew everyone, all the clients by name, and he would go around and talk with them and smile. And even when he did everything he could to be there like once a week. Even when he wasn't feeling good, he would try and make that effort, but he just knew them by name and knew who they were and smiled. And that will always stay with me. And that I want to do the same for my clients and just give them that level of care of love and kindness.
I had a best friend pass away in a climbing accident on Memorial Day last year. So just kind of coming up to that anniversary now is kind of bringing up a lot of emotions. But just like you said, I mean, it kind of comes and goes in waves. And some days it's like you feel great and you almost feel guilty for that. But other days you feel kind of cruddy. But I know for me that like any emotion that the caregivers would have showed or anything like that the nurses or the doctors showed, it wouldn't have been like rejected or anything like that. Like it would have just been welcome. So yeah. Anyways.
I had a sister that was 5 years older that had been really wonderful to me when I was a child. And when she got older, she got cancer and didn't tell anybody. And she didn't go to a doctor. She had breast cancer. So probably 4 or 5 years into it, my younger sister discovered it somehow. And anyway, so my sister, she started getting her lymph system affected her whole arm. It just became humongous, even down to her fingers. And so I had to feed her for 2 years and change her bandages on her breast. And when she died, I just was so angry at her because she didn't do something 5 years earlier. It was so preventable. And she was an incredible person. She could paint anything. She was a great artist. And I just thought, what a loss. It's totally preventable that she could have prevented this and didn't.
So how do you deal with that anger? How do you let it go and just feel the love that you always had for that individual?
I personally feel like it's. I've got a mic. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Sarah, thank you. Anger is a real emotion that, if it's I'll just say this. Sometimes if it's not dealt with properly, it can become deeper, much deeper. It can turn into bitterness. It can turn into unforgiveness. And that's when we've got to be real careful. So I would say talking about it. I would say sharing your feelings with professional people that can just kind of be alongside of you, family members and friends that can be alongside of you to help you. Because I think there's healing when we can express ourselves. I think that's something that comes natural to us too. There's a healing that can take place, as well as talking to other people about it. And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, sometimes we may never totally get over it, and that's okay too. We just got to try to keep living, right? Keep going forward. Rely on our faith. Rely on others to help us. And to find maybe that professional help that we might need, so that it doesn't totally decapacitate us from doing anything, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you wanted to share any more, Sarah.
Something kind of going on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. So I had a friend die young at 28, and I think I was more mad at myself because the week before I felt like I should reach out and call him and see how he's doing, and I didn't. I was like, oh, there'll be time, I'll call later, and there wasn't time. So I was kind of mad at myself for not reaching out that one last time. And one thing that helped me, because I do have a belief that they're on the other side, and I believe that I can, talk to God and he can deliver my message, or maybe they're listening. I don't know at that moment. So for me, it was super helpful just to get down on my knees and to just basically talk to him, to say a prayer to my Heavenly Father, but to just say, hey, I'm so sorry you didn't call, and I hope you can forgive me, and I love you. And just kind of just have a conversation. And it helped me to really release those feelings and kind of anger at myself. And I kind of had a feeling hey, it's okay, I'm good, So I think that was just super helpful to kind of just pray and just kind of have a conversation with the person, or I'm mad at you, or whatever.
Yeah.
That was super helpful.
That reminds me, my brother died. My brother called me out of the blue one night. I don't know if you remember this, honey. Mm-hmm. I mean, my brother and I were not really close at all. And he just randomly called me one night. I mean, I remember this to this day. I was in bed. I'm like, his name was Dean. I'm like, hey, bro, what's happening? He never came out and told me that he felt like he was dying. Mm-hmm. But he'd had throat cancer. He'd had open hearts. I mean, he had all kinds of physical situations that happened to him. Well, I didn't get it. I'm just having a normal, hi, how you doing, bro? And talking about the weather and talking about this and I think he honestly called me because he knew about my faith. He was raised with a different faith, but I think he was reaching out without even saying anything to dude, I need help.
And he was only 49.
He died at 51. Or no, he died at 50 years old. And he died, I think, less than 6 months later. So I'm like, oh. So after he passed, as I was going through that process, like you, I was feeling guilty. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Dad, gummit, why didn't I talk to him? Why didn't I reach out to him? Why didn't I share some scripture? I don't even know if I prayed with him. But like you, over time, I just kind of had to release that. I had to release that to God. And Lord, nothing's impossible with you. You can say hi to my brother right now. You can let him know that I love him. You can let him know that I'm sorry, and that was an immediate release, like you said. So thank you for sharing that. I went through that same experience.
I was going to say something about the anger part because my dad had died in 2005, and I went to that grief share that Kevin shared. And that's why I really believe in support groups. I mean, it helped me so much. But I actually went to the support group because I'm like, I want to be a hospice nurse. I'm working through school right now. And so I was like, oh, I'll go to this group because it'll be good for me as a hospice nurse to get this experience. Well, I didn't realize it had been 4 years since my dad died. And I went to that group, and actually it just wow, the tears just came and anger came because my dad and I didn't have a good relationship growing up. And he didn't treat me as good as a dad should. And so I had anger, I had unforgiveness, and yeah, it just all came out in that group. And it was really healing for me. And to hear others talk about their relationships, and just, yeah, God just used it in my life. And it was like 9 or 10 weeks that I went to it every week. And it just really helped me a lot to work through the anger that I didn't even realize I had. So.
As a care provider, we're there to be the eyes and ears sometimes for the family. And I was just wondering what things, I don't know if there's a paper or anything, but to look for in case I see something I can convey to the family, or maybe they might want to look into something, because I don't know anything about the dying process all that much and what I might come face with. So
Thank you. That's a great question. I just wanted to add one more thing, and then I'm going to address your question, Connie, for anger, because seems to be a big concept, I guess, that is laying on a lot of people's hearts today. So I love everything that everybody has said as they've shared their own experiences with grief. And I do think that anger is one that's not talked about as much, because I think, especially in a lot of different cultures, it's taboo, or you don't talk about the dead in a negative way, and so you kind of just have to bury those really tough feelings like anger. But one thing I just wanted to add, and I've had to utilize this with my own experiences in life and in hospice, and I'm not trying to be annoying by like saying one time in hospice, but one time in hospice, I had this patient who he killed himself, and I was legit angry because he had all of the tools. Like we checked on him daily. He anyway, he really had a lot of support, like an extensive amount of support from the hospice team, from his family, from his neighbors. And so part of me just was angry with him. His name is Jerry. But I think one thing I did to reframe my anger is really thinking about his perspective, right? When I thought about what he was feeling and what he was thinking, it really, I guess, softened and made me think like, hey, this isn't about me. And I'm not saying that when you have anger, you're being selfish. You're not. I think it's a very natural thing to be angry, and it is definitely not a self-centered thing. However, I do think a lot of times when we are angry in these situations, we are thinking about how it's affecting us, and that's totally normal. But when you make it more about like them, and they had their reasons for why they do the things they did, for the choices they made that we could not change because we all are our own agents of ourselves. And just that's one way I think that we can let go of the anger, is just knowing that they're just like us. They had choices that they made, and we couldn't have changed it. So anyway, sorry. So Connie, signs and symptoms of death. That's a really great question, and that's really hard to answer because it's so different. And I think it's going to be a lot different too in your case as a caregiver for people, mostly elderly people, right? And because a lot of times the signs and symptoms of death are so much more beforehand, but I guess in general. So we have what's called a pre-active stage of dying, and then active stage. So pre-active could be, a couple of maybe 3 to 4 weeks before somebody dies. and that's when they stop. They lose interest in eating, and they just, it's not that they're depressed, they just like their body, it's their way, the natural way of the body shutting down is stopping eating, right? And so, and then of course increased fatigue, but the main thing is food and water. So appetites really decrease, and that can really be so different from person to person. It might be a 6-month period where they're going from eating 100% of their meal to 10% of their meal, right? But that really is a big indication. If you see a pattern of increased weight loss and malnutrition and not even a desire really to eat, that's a huge sign and a symptom. But when we go into the active phase of dying, that's, a couple of weeks leading up, and they haven't had food and water 4 days, like 7 to 14 days. They're bedbound. They're not as talkative. And sometimes people will have a comeback. It's like their last hurrah. We've seen this over and over in hospice where they perk up and they're like, yay, and talk to everybody that's around them. And their family is convinced like, oh, they're getting better, but they're not. It's like, it's really interesting. It's so, like, it's a weird phenomenon. I don't know. And then they die. It's really interesting. So, but in general, like they just are a little more secluded. Their eyes are shut. They're sleeping so much during the day, maybe like 20 hours out of a 24-hour day they're sleeping. So I don't know if that helps at all, but
I've never seen a patient like talking to somebody up there.
oh yeah, that happens a lot. That's a really big sign of like the active phase, not even, or pre-active and active, of the active phase, like within days of dying. I've seen and heard that from patients. Yeah.
How long does that like phase where they kind of perk up, how long does that last?
Oh, there's no definitive answer. That could be, I think the most I've like heard of is like 3 days, but sometimes people perk up for a week or less. Yeah. Did you?
Oh, yeah, it's just different for each person. Just like, from what I've heard and worked with hospice, it could be a day, it could be a couple hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they die after, and then it's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Anyway.
Did you have a question?
Are we done? Oh, I just have a question. And I don't mean to sound like callous or anything, but at some point, I have a friend that worked for the NICU at Utah Valley for like 30 years, and she saw lots of babies die. And, I think, like I haven't worked for Aspen for very long, but I've had a few clients die, but I haven't cared for them for years and years. So it's been difficult sometimes, but not where we've developed this long-term relationship. But at some point, do you just develop the tools to deal with the grief easier? Or, because I don't know. I'm sure there's always one that hits hard home because it reminds you of somebody or whatever. But as you go along, do you just like get stronger at dealing with grief, or more? I don't know if that's the right word or not. Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I think it really comes down to your team and the support. So I don't know if it becomes easier, but it becomes easier to deal with as you have a supportive team and a team that's really proactive. And like my management, they're amazing. Like they always give us time and space to be able to talk freely and openly about what we're experiencing. And I think if you don't give yourself that time and space, then you have caregiver burnout, and you're going to burn out fast. And I've seen that a lot too, and within hospice, people that don't allow themselves to grieve, even when they're given tools and opportunities. But it might be that they don't know how to accept that. But yeah.
I was just going to add to what April said. In my experience, I've had clients that have perked up and done pretty good for a while, and then declined, and then perked up, you know, and had do that 2-3 times. Yeah.
It is hard.
It's like it gives you a false hope.
Yeah, so it's not once they perked up and declined, it's over. Not necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Any last comments? I think we have 2 minutes. Okay. Well, thank you again so much. You guys are amazing. What you do is amazing. I can't tell you the impact that you have on these families. It's immense. It really is. And you're the ones who are seeing them every day. So you're really building these long-term relationships. So it is really hard when you do lose them. So I hope you can, pat yourself on the back and know that you're making a big difference, even if you don't think you are. So anything you want to add? Amen.
Amen. Yeah. God bless you all. Thank you for coming today, and thank you again for the opportunity, Susan.
Thank you all. Thank you for the wonderful information and for the warmth and the spirit that's been felt here at our meeting. And I just want to remind everyone, if you didn't sign in today, you won't get your added bonus for being here. Anyway, and there's a little treat for you afterwards upstairs, and we also have just a token of our appreciation that we would like to give to you as well. So,
Thank you all.